Every horror fan has been waiting for The Conjuring: Last Rites, since it's going to be the last chapter in the Conjuring Universe. Now, as the day of release is slowly creeping closer, it's high time that we look into the event that inspired the final chapter of the Conjuring Universe. That's right, folks, today we're going to talk about the Smurl Haunting. This is a tale that unfolded over 15 years ago in Pennsylvania, and today in our video, we'll learn more about the case that has rightfully become the blueprint for this movie. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Against the devil.
In nomine Patris.
The Smurl family's nightmare begins. Jack and Janet Smurl were two ordinary people living in Pennsylvania trying to make a peaceful life for themselves. Jack was a Navy veteran and a hard-working metal worker, while Janet was a homemaker. Jack was very calm and composed as a father, and Janet was a very doting mother, so you could say they were pretty much like every family ever. In 1972, Hurricane Agnes struck. As a result, the Wilkes-Barre area was completely devastated, and they were forced to relocate to a duplex at 328 Chase Street in West Pittston. This home was perfect for them to rebuild their life with their two young daughters. The house they moved into felt like any other house. It was a little old in places, a little creaky here and there, but it was serviceable. The Smurls shared this duplex with Jack's parents, who lived on the adjoining side. This kind of a joint family setup was the perfect setup for the young parents trying to get back on their feet, but things started to take a turn, not for the better. The little shifts around the house were subtle at first. They could feel this cold breeze passing through closed rooms. Sometimes, old pipes would make random clanking noises which didn't make sense. Just outside of sight, the family would notice small shadows darting past them. Now, these are all small things, and it could just be the building settling down and the anxiety of moving to a new place after such a terrifying hurricane. But then the odors came. Without any warning, random bouts of acrid and sulfur-like smells would show up and disappear all around the house. Janet would slave on her hands and knees, scrubbing the floors, washing the linens, even checking for mold, but none of it could explain the smell. Soon after, the homeowners started to hear whispers, just soft enough to make everyone wonder if they were real or imagined. They heard voices being echoed through the hallways and random doors being slammed, even though no one seemed to do it. By the late 1970s, the disturbances, if you want to call them that, had grown. There were electrical issues all around the house. Once, a television burst into flames just like that. Another time, the family dog was thrashed against a wall by some invisible force. Jack and Janet were terrified, but they didn't know what to do. Janet, a Catholic, started to pray more with her family, hoping that their faith would be enough to fortify the house. But that didn't work. In fact, things got worse. When the 1980s started, the disturbances in the house turned completely violent. One of the Smurl daughters was pushed down the staircase. The culprit? An unknown force. Jack himself claimed that he was being physically and sexually assaulted by a dark presence in bed. As you can imagine, these assaults left a huge mark on Jack's psyche, causing him a lot of anguish and shame that he couldn't bear. Janet started to hear animalistic sounds in the walls day in and day out, making all of them wonder what exactly was happening. Things were starting to get very serious. Then, the event that shook the entire Smurl family took place. The year was 1985. A heavy ceiling light detached and crashed directly onto the head of their youngest daughter. Luckily, she survived, but with this close of a call, the entire family was on high alert. Janet became completely sleepless. Her anxiety went through the roof. She couldn't help but pray through the night in the hopes that no harm would come to her family. Jack, on the other hand, started to withdraw from his family because of the assaults on him. Their daughters were completely emotionally distressed. They had difficulties in school, a fear of being alone, and often suffered from nightmares. By this point, even Jack's parents were being haunted on their side of the duplex. With the entire family now being haunted, the Smurls had no choice but to reach out to local priests. Some came to help the family. They blessed the home, but nothing changed. Hopelessness and desperation grew amongst the Smurl clan. Then, in 1986, the media got a whiff of this paranormal story. Curiosity was already peaked, so now Jack and Janet decided to go on to talk shows and radio programs in the hopes that their plea for help would reach someone and they would get some help. A lot of reports from that time state that the Smurls looked completely battered. They were hollow-eyed and frightened. Even though they were terrified, they kept telling their stories, hoping that someone, somewhere, would be able to help. Enter the Warrens, demonologists in action. It was 1986 when the Smurls finally reached out to the household names famed demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren. After their success with the Amityville hauntings and Perrin hauntings, they were kind of like the last resort for the couple. Immediately upon entering, the Warrens sensed that the Smurls weren't going to be the easiest case. Their house wasn't just haunted, it was a demonic stronghold. Lorraine, a clairvoyant and a medium, often felt overwhelmed with sensations and visions the moment she stepped into the duplex. According to her, this duplex was a hive of demons. According to her visions, there were multiple spirits living in that house. There was a young girl who was almost always sobbing in corners, a sad man who walked around the duplex looking lost, an elderly woman always seeming confused and tormented, but the most dangerous of them all was this demonic force that seemed to be controlling all of them. The Warrens believed that this demon was the one forcing every other spirit to cause chaos. To get to the bottom of this, Ed made a bold move. He tried to provoke the demonic entity by using all kinds of sacred objects: holy water, crucifixes, and prayer. He recorded multiple sessions in the house, and those recordings captured growls, whispers, and banging noises which cannot be refuted. In fact, in one instance, the crucifix flung itself across the room and was embedded in a wall. The Warrens also tried to do an exorcism, but whenever they attempted exorcisms, the house would react violently. The furniture would move, the temperature would plummet dramatically to the point that they could see their breath, even though it was the middle of summer. During certain blessings, Jack even collapsed to the ground and had seizures. According to Lorraine, all of this, including what was happening to Jack, was psychic retaliation. Despite several attempts, the Warrens weren't able to banish the entity permanently. They stood by the Smurls because, for them, this case was like a spiritual war. Even Ed stated in interviews that this case was one of the most disturbing they had ever faced. Controversy, exorcisms, and media frenzy. As the Warrens got more and more involved with the case, the national attention was redirected towards the Smurls. The Smurl house became a point of fascination and, of course, ridicule. Media vans would crowd the house, wanting to snag a moment with the family members. Curious neighbors would gather nearby. The family's life was dissected on public airwaves. The Smurls gave interviews to local newspapers, radio hosts, and even to the people who were talking. While most people were sympathetic, there were a whole group of people who thought this was nothing but hysteria, hoax. Between 1986 and 87, 3 separate exorcisms took place. The local Scranton diocese sanctioned them, and several priests participated. During the exorcisms, terrifying things started happening all over the house. Objects went flying and temperatures would suddenly drop. Jack also began showing signs of being possessed, and as you may have guessed, despite all the prayers, nothing actually worked. The evil remained as resilient as ever. The intensity of the haunting and its resilience against holy intervention got everyone curious, but people still weren't convinced that there was something truly demonic taking place. Reverend Joseph Picard, a Catholic priest, actually visited the house and publicly stated that he felt nothing unusual upon stepping inside the home. He believed that this was all just mass hysteria. Other clergy members were a lot more supportive, but they also felt like the family was inviting more attention to themselves by talking about the demonic incidents inside the home. And not all attention is good attention. In the midst of all this chaos, the Smurls were often accused of cashing in on their story. A lot of people found the sudden media appearances very suspicious. The timing of the incident also didn't help. A lot of people felt that, just like George and Kathy Lutz, the Smurls had a terrifying story with religious overtones and a glaring connection to the Warrens. The parallels between the two were getting harder to ignore. And then, they got a book deal which sealed the deal. That's right, folks. In late 1986, the Smurls co-wrote Haunted, One Family's Nightmare with the Warrens and Robert Curran. This book went into shocking detail, effectively airing out all the scary things that happened to the Smurls. From the demonic hierarchy Lorraine sensed to Jack's horrifying experiences, nothing was left out. The believers praised this book for its content, while others felt that it was completely fabricated. Then, 5 years later, in 1991, the book was adapted into a made-for-TV movie titled The Haunted. Jeffrey DeMunn played Jack, while Sally Kirkland took on the role of Janet. This movie leaned into the religious horror tropes very hard, but also tried to ground itself in reality with the heavy-hitting emotional moments. There were scenes of levitation, possession, and prayer rituals throughout the movie that were for sure dramatized. But despite the dramatization, there was no denying that the whole movie was based on the very real Smurls' testimonies. With this TV show, a new wave of believers came out of the woodwork, and with the believers came louder criticism. Paranormal debunker Joe Nickel joined in on the criticism, stating that the entire haunting was just a misinterpretation of stress and sleep paralysis. Others even went on to say that maybe the economic strain of the time led to this family twisting the story in this way to get money, while others believed that maybe something bad happened. This was the Smurls' way of dealing with the trauma. Then 1988 rolled around, and a very compassionate person entered the picture. It was Pastor Joseph Adonisio. He heard about the story and led a deep spiritual cleansing in the Smurls' home. According to them, there was some relief after this particular prayer. The atmosphere instantly felt lighter, and the loud banging had finally stopped. Pastor Joseph Adonisio finally believed that the battle between good and evil was over, and they had won, simply because of their persistent faith. But later, Janet came forward, saying that even after all of that, she never truly stopped hearing the knockings. She often saw fleeting shadows, and for her, the haunting never ended. Aftermath. What happened to the Smurl house? After 15 long years of hauntings, exorcisms, prayers, and nightmares, the Smurls decided that they no longer wanted to deal with it. Even though this house was their home, the psychological trauma was too much, and they finally decided to leave 328 Chase Street behind. This is where things get interesting. The tenants who moved in after their departure stated that they faced no supernatural activity in the house, and this contrast was extremely stark. So this led to a lot of speculation, ranging from maybe the demonic entities being tied to the Smurls, or maybe this entire thing was a case of group hysteria, hallucination, or stress. While the critics were loud and proud with their opinions, so were the believers. They genuinely believed that the Smurls were victims of spiritual warfare. Some believed that they were targeted because of their faith and family unity. Maybe the demons actually wanted to break this happy family apart, and that's why they did all they did. This case has remained one of the most famous cases amongst paranormal investigators, theologians, and scholars, even to this day. Ed and Lorraine remained steadfast in their decision. They believed the Smurls through and through and weren't afraid to say it. They included the Smurl family case in their notes, lectures, and books, often listing it as one of their most dangerous and difficult encounters. They stated that this case was their proof that sometimes these spiritual battles cannot be won with just prayer and exorcism. The haunting of 328 Chase Street may have ended with the Smurls moving out, but it gave birth to questions about the nature of evil, the line between reality and perception, and the power of belief, which isn't explained even to this day. Fiction versus reality. What the film might change. The Conjuring franchise has always walked a thin line between fact and fiction. Every movie in the franchise is based on real cases where the film amps up the drama for cinematic impact, and this movie won't be any different. There's no denying that the Smurl case is emotionally charged, and perhaps that's the reason why the Conjuring Universe picked this particular incident. The Conjuring Universe has always thrived on this kind of emotionally charged tale, where we see ordinary and relatable families become the target of supernatural evils. The psychic visions, the presence of a spirit, and the demonic confrontations that terrified the Smurls and worried the Warrens are effectively gold mines for filmmakers. These kinds of scenes amp up the dread and horror of the movie, so there could be changes in the scenes we saw in the trailer directly inspired by the Smurls' accounts, with minor dramatization for the camera here and there. Plus, Last Rites is going to be the closing chapter of the Warrens' legacy, with the Smurl case being at its heart. The message that the Warrens never give up even when victory seems impossible will be sent, which is a very apt way of giving this fan-favorite universe the goodbye it deserves. The tension amongst the public is the central emotional arc of this film. We'll probably see a dramatization of these public controversies and explore the major toll they took on the Warrens, since this time around, they're not just fighting demons, they're also fighting media scrutiny, their own limits, and public doubt. We also saw the Annabelle doll making an appearance in the trailer, even though there are no direct ties between it and the Smurl case. So we're curious to see how they're going to loop in our favorite scary doll into the mix. The demonic entities that were felt by the family will probably get physically manifested for jump scares and supernatural flair, but that's pretty much expected, yes? How else would we get our mandatory jump scares if not from these demons? But overall, from whatever is out about the movie, it seems like the film is committed to honoring the emotional truth of the case. The pain the Smurls felt while the Warrens worked tirelessly is something that will make the cinematic experience enjoyable if the movie manages to pull it off. These themes of heartbreak, fear, resolve, hopelessness, and faith are the main central themes that have the ability to take this movie from just another ghost story to something deeply impactful. Marvelous verdict. The Conjuring franchise started over a decade ago. We've had 8 mainline films and a few spin-offs. If you've followed the franchise as earnestly as we have, then we're sure you feel like you know Lorraine and Ed Warren too. This couple has been through a lot. Finally, after more than a decade of surviving horrifying ordeals, this beloved couple is getting their heartfelt farewell. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, it doesn't matter. The reality of the Smurl case is harrowing even without the supernatural aspect, because this is a story of a family that lived for 15 years in fear. Then, they were scrutinized, harassed, and judged for having the same experiences. The psychological toll of all of that is immense, and with this movie, we're not just ending the franchise, we're also admitting the impact that this case had on all of us. The Conjuring: Last Rites comes to theaters near you on the 5th of September, 2025. So, this Teacher's Day, learn what it means to be afraid, learn what it means to be resilient, and learn what evil truly is. Are you guys as stoked for this movie as we are? Have you booked your tickets to the theaters? What are your opinions on the Smurl case and the last case of this franchise? How do you think the Annabelle doll is related? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.